Guys, so after reading our article about this guy named Bob Ziak who listens to the earth to figure out where plate boundaries are underneath the ocean, you discovered there's two different types of plate boundaries underneath the ocean. And there's another one, which we'll get into later, but the main ones are convergent boundaries and divergent boundaries. Pay attention to the meanings. A convergent boundary moves towards the same place. A divergent boundary is when the plates are moving apart in different directions. So I like to use hand gestures to help me remember convergent, moving towards the same place, and divergent, moving apart in different directions. Okay. So here are some tips to help you distinguish the two words, to tell apart the two words. Divergent, different directions. Divergent, different directions. They all start with a T. Divergent, the plates are going in different directions, as you can see in this picture. The arrows are moving apart because the plates are moving apart. Another way is you can take the prefix of the word divergent. Diverge means to separate, or think of die and divergent means similar to divide. Divide means to split apart. So remember, divergent is when the plates are moving in different directions. Convergent, which helps you remember, is that it comes closer. They all start with C. Convergent, come closer. The plates come closer to each other. They basically collide. Another C word is collide. Convergent, they come closer to each other and one sinks. Okay, underneath the ocean, this is what happens. Now, let's get into more detail about these boundaries. So, divergent boundary is when the plates move and hot material from the mantle comes up to fill the space between them. Okay, so when the plates move apart, naturally that underneath, the layer underneath the hard solid rock, you have a gap. And that gap automatically gets filled by the hot molten rock that moves up and makes new material, new plate material for the earth. The hot material cools and hardens and adds new rock to the edge of each plate. So it makes basically new land. Okay. So you see my thumbs come up as I split apart my hands. It represents that the new material or new land is being created at a divergent boundary. And you need to really realize that at a divergent boundary, when you're creating this new land, it's basically the youngest plate material, the youngest land on Earth. Okay. When you are creating new land from the hot molten rock, filling up that gap that the divergent boundary creates. Convergent boundary is when the two plates collide and run into each other. One is forced underneath the other. So, convergent boundary, it behaves in this way if it is under the ocean, because when two plates collide and the oceanic plate, which is the denser plate, it tends to sink because you have learned that denser things sink. Um, so the oceanic plate crashes into a continental plate, and the oceanic plate will be bend down and get forced underneath the other plate. The plate on the bottom is shoved into the mantle, bending downward and forming a deep trench at the boundary. And as you can see in this picture, so some of it goes down and becomes part of the mantle, but if it goes down deeper, it could melt into magma, which comes back up as lava in volcanic eruption to make new land. But for that moment, basically, land is getting destroyed at a convergent boundary. Okay, because when these two plates move towards each other, that land is pushed down, underneath, and is destroyed. You're getting less land because that hard, solid rock becomes soft rock, soft molten rock, or becomes magma. Now, let's talk about our key concepts. So at a convergent boundary, older plate material is pushed down into the mantle and is destroyed. It becomes softened rock or melts into magma. At a divergent boundary, new material is created as the molten rock rises to the surface. Okay. And I will see you guys later in another video. And I hope you guys really understand in detail these two main boundaries.